just
It's got
all the way over
my
here.
hair on.
That's better.
At least it's not showing me as being my balls. See what? That's put my arms like this.
Okay, so Larry, you say hi.
Hi.
So this is Larry. And for those of you who are joining us first time, I am, of course, doclqj. And so today we're going to talk about dispute resolutions. And, of course, he is the expert in dispute resolutions and dispute management from the legal side of things. Of course, I'm the expert from the psychotherapeutic or psychology standpoint. So understanding how people think, the human mind, and how we function and how we actually resolve conflict, and how conflict typically arises and how people come to the impasse, should I say, right? Where we reach that wall where we can't really resolve things that become problems for us with people. So we're going to talk about community disputes today. We talked about, what did we talk about last week?
We talked about, we just did kind of an overview of dispute resolution.
Yeah, so like informal and formal. Right. So we're going to talk about the different types. We're also going to kind of differentiate between informal and formal community disputes this week.
Right.
Julie is in the background. She's doing some of the typing, and hopefully she'll be able to kind of manage the comments for the people who can catch us live and that won't catch us on the replay. Most of you guys will catch us on the replay because, like I said, we do this on Saturdays. And I know a lot of people are working on Saturdays. This is what's most convenient for us. But also we'll be doing this on a regular basis via podcasting as well, because podcasting is the primary format that people will be catching a lot of this. Casting is the number one way to reach consumers because you can listen to us while you drive. And I guess in your car is the number one way for you to receive information and process it and think about it while you're in the car with your kids, family, husbands, wives, all that good stuff. So community disputes, one of the things that came to mind when we were talking about this prior to actually launching live was like some of the things from an environmental standpoint. So like homeowner associations. It's one of the ones that for me is personal. I recently had an issue because there was a tree and I'm allergic to dogwood trees and had one that I had to cut down because it was hanging over the front stairs of my home, and I had to cut it down. Then the HOA was just like, okay, well, you cut that tree down and now the yard doesn't match. So you got to cut the other one down. And so I'm thinking to myself, as a person who is, for the most part, I think that nature is, something that we should preserve for the vast majority of consumers, vast majority of people. Sometimes we don't think about the way that we affect the rest of the living things around us. Trees, plants, those things are still living things. And we are sometimes invading on their space, right? Yeah, we need our living space and we need to be able to survive, but so do they. And, the tree wasn't doing anything to anybody. But I don't want to be fined either, right? I don't want to have to pay all this extra money. It gets expensive. It's $50 a day after the initial $500. So it can get very expensive, very pricey. So you got to cut the tree down. To cut a tree down is very expensive too. $3,000 adds up, extremely quickly. So I'll let him kind of talk about what the process is for us and then how we can kind of get the ball rolling. Who do you contact? What are the steps that you initiate as a consumer, as a regular lay person in the community? Who do you contact? What steps do you initiate on your side, as a person in the community who is trying to do something on your end when you see something wrong in the community?
Well, first let's talk about why we have associations, HOAs to begin with. This is a legal instrument that developers use to make sure that while they're doing the development, that people don't degrade the property value, so the property values stay high while they're doing that. Now they leave these HOAs afterwards for the people to manage that live in the HOAs, and they sometimes get carried away, and it depends on who's on the board. But the HOA, this is going to be more of a formal type of dispute because it's based in law. Now, I'm not a practicing attorney, but I am a practicing mediator, and I didn't forget my education from law school. But what we look at, the first thing that you look at is where's the power, and their power that they come from is just generally delegated from the state, and they are a legal entity. Now, some of them actually have eminent domain where they can actually take your property. They have the right to issue citations. They have the right to uh, do a lot of things, and they have, which is going to be in the CCRs or their set of rules. Some of them just called HOA rules.
Hmm.
When you have a dispute, the first thing you want to do is get those rules if you didn't already have that. Now they also have an attachment on your deed. In many cases, they'll have that says that the HOA will provide insurance or certain things. Not all HOAs are like this, and again, it changes from state to state, county to county, on what the law allows them to do.
Hmm.
So if you have a dispute, you've been given a citation, you don't agree with it, you can always appeal it to the board. Now the problem with that is some of these HOAs only meet once a quarter,
Hmm.
so you may have a long time before you can actually resolve it. Generally, they try to meet at least once a month. Those are some of the better ones. Now, you're also paying these people with your dues, your annual dues, whatever they are, and some of them are quite high. So you need to make sure that you're being fully represented. Now, there's also some of them will pay taxes, um, and you have the common areas, the pools. Some of them have lakes, which are actually storm retention basins, and they rename them as a lake. Um, I have had cases where um, the storm basin was built over a, a fault, and the fault opened and took away the lake. And so the people were calling and saying, "Our lake's gone," and it's like, well, technically, it's not a lake because it wasn't connected to a stream
Okay.
or anything. It was just stormwater runoff, and it was held in that basin. And the developer didn't do their geology background on that, and it disappeared one day. It went down the fall.
Hmm.
But anyway, you want to look at where your CCRs are, what they allow you to do. If you disagree with them, the first thing that you can do is become a board member. That changes the power structure from the HOA just totally being in charge and you being a recipient of their citations or whatever, um, to being able to make decisions. If you're on the board, you can help make decisions. The other process you can do is if you can get a majority of the residents of that HOA together, you can dissolve the HOA. However, that's a little touchy, and you probably should seek help of a practicing attorney because, again, it's connected to your deeds. You're going to have your deed cleaned, and then there's the issue of the common areas, and there's the issue of what's you got to clear your deed, but there's also issues of insurance and so on that the HOA might provide. So before you dissolve,
Hmm.
you may want to check all that out and have a property attorney look at that and give you some advice on what it is. Because again, it changes from county to county, state to state. So there's, the other things that you can do is advocate. You can create your own neighborhood group to work with the board, whether it's an architectural group, it's a recreational group, entertainment group. A lot of times, the more you become involved with the board, the more power, the more you're going to be able to make a change. Now, the other side of it is if you just want to just go in and litigate, you can do so, but be prepared to pay a lot of money to your attorney and possibly lose, because some of these HOAs, and depending on the state, they do have a lot of legal power.
The possibly lose part, though.
Yeah, well, when you go to court, you can have the best laid case in the world and still lose. That's just kind
Because
of
it's really not, what the facts are. Sometimes it's what you can prove in court.
it's what you can prove.
Right.
And if they've already got the CCRs that says that your grass, when I lived in Kansas City, they actually came out and measured the height of my grass. If it was above, I think 6 inches high, I got a citation. So then they'll issue citations for too many pots in front of your house, too many bushes, too many whatever. And it's all in the interpretation of who's on the architectural board. But if you get on the architectural board, you can change those things. And that's the best way to do it. And that's what dispute resolution is about, is involuntary or voluntary, voluntary dispute management, where you go in and you talk it out with the board rather than going to court. This is an alternative to court.
1 second, I'm going to start the stream differently on here than on here.
Okay.
It's fine. You can keep going there.
That's
you guys, I'm double tasking. I'm doing a double stream.
So the next thing that we could talk about is informal community disputes. And generally with community disputes, it's about turf. It's about, neighborhood disputes, neighbor against neighbor dispute on property lines, so on and so forth. But I mean, they fill the full gambit, everything from gangs, drug dealing, whatever undesirable in your issues in your community. And one of the ways that you can deal with this and change that power structure is to become an advocate. A community advocate can get the group together. You can promote your issue through the community to the local governmental authorities, to the county. And a lot of counties have people set up to do just that. There's a lot of people that were community advocates that went on to be, politicians and so on. In fact, Barack Obama used to be a community advocate. But there's a lot of things that you can do. It just depends on the power. And so what you want to do when you're looking at it is look at the power structure. Who has the power? If there's laws, regulations, then you want to go to that authority and petition them. Advocate, get people together, sign petitions. You can actually sway the power in your community to get a lot of things done. A lot of people have been quite successful at getting, community gardens, community marketing, and it's very helpful. And you become more involved in the community, and the community works better with you. So, when you become a part of it, you're no longer the problem.
So do you think that sometimes it's about, for the most part, do you think it's about how well you join with the person who you are having the dispute with?
I think the key is organization, getting yourself organized, making sure that you can tell the story of what the issue is. Mm-hmm. Documentation is everything. There's depends on what it is. The issue is, is more documentation you have, more that you can tell the story of why it's good, why it's bad.
Mhm.
It's going to help you, and you need to be able to tell that story to where everybody understands it.
Okay. So the next one was, we did examples of community disputes because for the most part, it could be anything that, causes, people to bump heads.
Right. Well, anything that causes an argument that escalates to that's basically a dispute. Whether it doesn't have to be, um, it doesn't have to be violent, but a lot of times that is
Hmm.
um, a tool that a lot of people use is to intimidate and threaten violence. And there's ways to get around that. You can, I mean, that's pretty much your uh,
Domain, right?
yeah, to talk about how to talk somebody down.
Hmm.
Um,
De-escalation is sometimes like our specialty. Oftentimes we're called in to, we even have police officers sometimes ask us, like, how do I de-escalate when, I go in and you have a couple who are trying to basically get one another locked up and they're both the offenders, and we don't want to take both of them to jail, and at the end of the day both of them have to go to jail and there are kids involved, and then the kids child protective services have to be called and these types of things. And sometimes it's really just about getting both of them to calm down, but sometimes they're both so hostile and both of them the tension is so elevated nobody's listening. And we have to understand that when we are so agitated at one another, our brain is no longer at the rational state of mind, and so we can't get to places like where we resolve or manage conflict. We don't know how to communicate with one another, we don't know how to listen.
that's what we always talk about. Not only do you listen, but you have to hear what they're saying.
Right,
And
right.
you do that by asking a series of questions.
But see, you're not there. You're not
That's
there.
true.
So you have to know how to cue yourself to be in that rational state of mind. And so that involves, before you get to that place, coming to an agreement on what's going to be our agreed safe space, safe word, safe color, you know? What is going to be the shut off switch? For the person who's still at a place of, you know, resonance, well, I can recognize that we're both not seeing each other, for what we are.
Right.
This is the color orange. That means shut it off. That means we're done. We're done with this. Okay. And that means that we need to back off, that we've had enough. Okay. Both of us have had enough. This is the cue for us to go back into a corner and allow each other some space to breathe. This is what we need now. Let's come to another place. And sometimes we have to allow each other space to do that. And the same thing happens in situations when we're not getting along with our neighbors, because oftentimes your neighbor is the person who has the dog that's pooping on your property, you know, that's coming across the street taking the poop on your yard that you worked hard, to plant these nice, beautiful flowers. You know, your neighbor's dog's coming digging it up.
Burying their bones.
Right. These things can cause disputes between people as well. And so instead of arguing and going and filing complaints and these kinds of things that cause escalation and then that cause chaos in the community, how do you get to the point where you're able to say, or go to the wife of the neighbor, and say, hey, we need to sit down and have a conversation. Let's talk about this. How do we connect the dots?
And we generally call that third party intervention.
Right.
So when we go into, I had a dispute some time ago on a railroad that was terminal that was in a community.
Mm-hmm.
It was an EJ community, which is an environmental justice community of minority people.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to, a lot of times corporations like to build landfills, refineries in low income areas because land's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And because the people seldom complain about it. We do have a lot of communities in this country where the cancer rate is extremely high because of the air pollution from factories and so on. So when
Mhm.
I go into a situation like this, the first thing I try to do is to identify all of the parties involved. That can be extremely difficult and take a lot of time. One that was the rail line, I had the city had called me in, and they said we have 5 groups. Well, no. After I did my research, I found out they had 11 groups.
Mhm.
So though we had to get all those people together, we had to listen to them. We had to hear what they were saying. We had to write down all of their issues
Mhm.
and then address those with the city and the county. And these things take time. They
Right.
take a long time. I worked on that for 5 years. In fact, I got my master's thesis on in dispute resolution on that community. Um, but that just tells you how long it takes.
Right.
But they're not. You can't be over anxious and want and demand something right now to happen, because it's not going to happen. It's going to take time. And when you've got 11 different groups, literally thousands of people,
Mhm.
before you can move forward, they all have to agree on something. So you need to be able to go in and get consensus from all these groups. That's going to take several meetings. That's going to take a lot of education. We do a lot of, as mediators, we do a lot of education. Now, the interesting thing about, I also had one where a poultry farm had come into an EJ community, and one of the complaints was for community as no one that worked in that community worked at that plant. And so they wanted the plant to hire them. The plant said, fine, we need workers. Come on in. No one from the community went over to apply for the job. Why? Because it was minimum wage. And it's not a very pleasant job.
Right.
And so that when we were working with that, that was like, okay, this is what you said you wanted, but it really wasn't what they wanted. And that dispute is still going on.
Mhm.
Some of these are 20, 30-year-old disputes.
And so then that leads me to the question is, does this stuff ever really get resolved? So when we say dispute resolution, when we look at it from a psychotherapeutic point of view, right? We look at resolution. We solve problems. We
Mhm.
People bring us their issues, they bring us their gripes, they bring us their history, they bring us their deepest traumas, they bring us their deepest secrets, the very intimacies of their lives. And we sort through them, and we guide those people through the discoveries, the heartaches, the pains, the traumas. We guide them through gently so that they sort through all of these layers of self, and we help them look at things, reframe and reshape so that they see them in various ways, and they can actually heal and reveal all the different levels of self, and they can actually get to a resolution, and they can live and walk their lives in a different way, and they can be different. You understand?
Right, right.
But so in when they go to resolve things through legal means, do they ever actually have resolution?
Well, and it's your interpretation of what resolution is. If we look at labor disputes,
Hmm.
they consider the winning a contract as
Hmm.
resolution.
Right.
However, that contract's going to expire over a certain amount of time, and
Hmm.
you're going to be right back negotiating again. That's why I say that it's dispute management. We don't have a true win-win
Hmm.
situation.
So winning is resolving.
Yeah, winning. What that's what we strive for. We try to do a win-win situation to
Right.
where everybody gets what they want. That seldom ever happens. Well, you get a little bit of what you want this year, or maybe a little bit more next year. Then we'll go back and we'll do another contract, and you'll get a little bit more, or maybe you won't. I
Okay.
mean, the parties have to agree with that. So, and we base that on what we call objective criteria,
Hmm.
and every dispute has different objective criteria. So what we try to do is well, we call it mind mapping, and it's go through and we try to map out all the issues and try to figure out what would work for both parties. Now, as a mediator, you're neutral. You cannot sway either party. You let them make the decisions. And I'll tell you, that's the biggest mistake that most mediators make is by going in and suggesting a resolution, because it's going to come back on you. They're going to basically say,
You're not
well,
neutral.
I did what you said and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Or it didn't work to where I was happy. I was 100% happy with what I got. Or I changed my mind. So, and guess whose fault it is? It's your fault, because you suggested it. So the parties have to make those suggestions.
Right.
The parties have to come to agreement with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can say, would this work if you did this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll say, well, I don't know. And say, okay, why don't you two get together and design this or come up with a solution?
And tell me what this will look like.
And yeah, you decide what it looks like.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you. I'm just kind of as a mediator, I'm kind of a coach.
Right.
You know, I'm telling you,
Okay.
this is what you need to do. You need to get together. You need to work out a situation. And I do those when we get into like large, water disputes and so on. You could have 2, possibly 3 different forms of water law.
Mm-hmm.
Each state has their own water law,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them differ slightly from each other. And that's why they become federal cases, because it's a dispute between 2 states.
Mm-hmm.
They're very complicated. And we look at a volumetric type of resolution. So many acre feet of water for each person at certain levels of the stream or whatever. So it's not like, again, it depends on how much water's in the stream if you're going to be able to get that.
Mm-hmm.
You may not. In fact, most of the time you don't, because most of the streams in this country are over allotted. So, and then the quality of the water, there's a lot in there. That's why we go back to calling it management.
So what do you think about what's going on right now with the whole Flint, Michigan thing?
I understand that they now have a new master.
Mm-hmm.
And a special master is a person that in law that where the court appoints. They're basically a mediator. They have expertise in water law. They will come back and look at. Well, again, it's going to be volumetric. That's what they're going to go up, probably going to resolve. But the new master, I don't know exactly where they're going to go with it, and it depends on what their models. Their hydrologists tell them that they can get, and what the other states are asking for. When you have multi-state disputes, and water disputes are almost always protracted. They've been around. Look at Colorado; it's been around. That dispute's been around for a long time.
But what do you think is the overarching concern in that case? Like, what do you think is the one thing that's causing the gross contamination? Like, at that volume of a contaminant, like, what is it that you think is the huge dispute at question?
Well, it's an allocation.
Okay.
With the Flint and Chattahoochee.
Mm-hmm.
It's an allocation, and it's also a lot of it is like we have the surface water and then we have the groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
Not all states have groundwater law, and so that makes it difficult if your water's stored in the ground, and then it's what we're looking at is allocation in the stream.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to do. Now in the West, they have much better groundwater law. Mr. Colorado has a lot to do with that, and Arizona actually. I mean, it's either prior appropriation, riparian, or like in the case of Arizona, it's active management areas. So it's like I said, each state is different. It's very complex, and it takes a long time to resolve these. So sometimes when we're looking at community disputes that are based in water for pollution,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to go to the state and the federal statutes
Mm-hmm.
to see what the source is, and then those government agencies will probably take action against the perpetrator.
So, do you think in those cases with the layperson, so like the various residents, would they have a valid claim? Would they go to state legislation? Would they say, hey, My kids are being affected by our water source? Or would they say, hey, I'm affected by this water
Mhm.
source, by
The,
this pollution in the water, and because I'm affected, I want to sue?
the Clean Water Act has the gosh, I can't even think of what it's called in it. You have the citizen suit ability
Hmm.
in there. It was specially put into the Clean Water Act when it was first initiated. But you do have the citizen suit. However, to take that route
Hmm.
is going to be expensive for the individual.
Okay.
So you do want to probably get several people together so you could offset some of the expense.
Okay. So people would band together and then they would pursue legal counsel together, like a class action suit?
That
More
is,
like,
that basically the citizen suit is spelled out in the Clean Water Act what you can do, and you definitely want competent legal representation to go before you go before that. And they're all slightly different again, so it's difficult for me to say,
hmm.
exactly what you should do, but you can create an advocacy group and with proper legal representation move forward on that, and they will come up with their own process of how to move forward with it, because there's certain things that you need to do to bring a suit.
Okay. Okay. Well, you guys, I want it to be under 30 minutes, and I think that we have gone a little bit over 30 minutes because the late started podcast parts at 26:11 right now.
Oh.
Um, so here is this is what the book looks like. This is a great resource for you guys. Resource based dispute management. And the interesting thing is that I don't think Larry understood when he wrote it, but he was very systemic in his writing it. It's very thorough and interconnected. The way it's written is meant to connect all of the dots and make people understand how things and people are interrelated, and how that connects or stimulates disputes, in people and
it's
in systems.
it's a systematic approach.
Yeah, it is. And the resolution part too. And although resolution from a legal standpoint doesn't necessarily connect to the resolve that we see on the psychotherapeutic piece, it still kind of leads to managing disputes. Managing disputes is better than harvesting negative energy, you know, and that's kind of what we seek to do here. Releasing negative energy, improving the positive vibes that you carry around and you kind of introduce and spew out and kind of share in your system. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you guys have any further questions, feel free to share them and put them on here. I do intend to put links, and Larry will go back and share with you guys all of the links for his social media, which he was supposed to bring today, but he forgot conveniently because this is the live feed. Once we are done, I do intend to definitely get on to him, and he's going to be more proactive next week, and he's going to have all the links ahead of time. So that way, everything is going to be underneath here, so you guys can like and subscribe and join in to subscribe into his channel as well. And the podcast link will be under there as well. Of course, all of my links are underneath here. Everything, you guys can find me everywhere, doclqj. That's kind of me and my handle and everything. I hope you guys have been informed on this one. It's been a lot of information in here, and we did cover a lot of things, but the bulk of everything today is on community resolution and how you guys can do your part in jump starting and knowing what to do and where and who to contact. Um, the crisis in Flint, Michigan is something that's very serious right now. And I want to draw your attention to understanding that doing your part and becoming an activist and just helping people who are in need, doing what you can, delivering water, even if it's just that's clean, that's bottled, that's preserved, helping out your neighbor, doing your part in the system. and being an active component in helping out people that are in need when you have whatever it is that you have to lend a hand is what you have to do. And that's just sharing in your responsibility and paying it forward. And that's all that I have, you guys. I'm doclqj. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. And if you are not already linked and subscribed, do that right now. Share this video, like this video, and thank you. Love you guys, and take care. Later.
Wow. It was a lot.